Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All these brave men that are in the room, a big warm applause to you for being so brave and joining us today. Today, I'm really honored to be with our esteemed guest, Margery. Just a quick formal introduction, because this will be a very informal conversation and dialogue with a lot of insightful experiences, a lot of learnings that we can take away from Margery. So just a quick introduction. So I am honored to be here, Margery, with you, and it is my pleasure to introduce the esteemed Margery Kraus, the founder and executive chairperson of award-winning advisory and advocacy communications consultancy APCO worldwide. With a career spanning over 4 decades, Margery has established herself as a leader in the field of global communications and public affairs. Her unwavering commitment to building a globally recognized business alongside the family is truly remarkable and inspirational to all of us. Margery, I think we agreed together that this will be a very honest, a very sincere conversation that a lot of you as mothers, wives, working women, sisters, brothers, husbands can take away today. And I'd like to start with where you started, how you started, and how do you build and sustain a business and continue to sustain it?
Well, my story is probably like a lot of women who start by accident, especially when I started my business, which was almost 40 years ago. And at that point, you know, the role of women in society was a lot different than it is. We've progressed. I am the child of immigrants. So I was in the U.S. I was brought up in a very small town, but my father had kind of the general store. And so I learned to work from the time I could see over the counter. We all pitched in. It was a family business. And so I've always had this entrepreneurial bug. But when I went to college, I was told I could be a teacher or a nurse. So I studied political science, and I taught 12th grade government. And one thing kind of led to another. Being in Washington, I kind of became a dot connector, I guess. And I realized that there's a lot of value you can provide to people by having ideas and helping other people fulfill their ideas. And I really enjoyed that. So I started the business. It was just me. And one of the things I came to realize is how hard it is for women to get financed. Which is something I'm happy to talk about. But today, APCO is 1,000 people, and we're in 35 countries. And all that was done by scratch. We didn't really, except in Dubai, we didn't really acquire businesses. We went out and built them. So we got to know the communities very well, which turned out to be a very good thing. And then it was just step by step, and it was a lot of hard work. And I would say to, especially the women in the room, if you've never done this before, just be honest with yourself, but don't be honest with everybody else because you go out and, you know, you have to lead. And sometimes you have to make decisions, and you don't know if they're right or wrong. You just have to go with your best decision you can have. And I used to joke that I'd make these decisions and I'd be out there and then I'd go in the bathroom and throw up because I was so nervous about the decision I'd made, but you couldn't really show that. But, you know, I make light of it now, but it's, you know, it's like everything else. You have to really want to do it. You have to work hard to do it, and every day is an adventure. And you have to learn really how to fail fast when you're failing, and how to bet behind the things that are working. And then I'd say the last thing is people. I have been blessed through my career with finding incredible people. I have people in the company who have been there 30 years. I have a lot of, and some of them have retired, but I have a lot of people who have just been incredibly loyal and helpful and smart, and you know, I've learned so much from them. And, you know, be open-minded. But there's no formula except hard work. There's no other formula.
So, Margery, you spoke about the importance of people and people that you work with. Before I ask you the question of how many women work in the organization, I understand that also your business, APCO, is majority women-owned as well. In the UAE, there are a lot of resolutions that were passed on by the cabinet to make life work balance, which we'll talk about a bit later, much easier. So we've had the resolution of childcare centers, for example, and I think by the end of 2020 there were about over 50 childcare centers that were established in federal and also government entities to help women to continue with their careers. And also the new work remotely and working from home that was also encouraged and made flexible for women has also encouraged a lot of women to stay in their positions. First of all, what do you think of such resolutions, and what have you done in your organization to make it easier for women to stay in your organization?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for women working is childcare or elder care. I mean, it's this whole care economy. And during COVID, about 3 million women left the workforce just because of the pressures of not having childcare or having other people they had to look after. And I think that's really unfortunate. I think you're being extremely progressive. Not only for the women working, but for the benefit of the children, to create these childcare facilities. I think childcare in the U.S., by example, is probably the hardest thing for working mothers, because there is no good solution, and you're feeling guilty all the time. I spent the first part of my career feeling guilty every day. Because you tried, we'll talk about the balance.
That's a universal feeling, I think, across the globe. It's not something that is, just for certain areas of the world. I think it's a universal feeling.
But I think if you know your children are well taken care of and that they're getting benefit from their situation, it's just a little bit easier. What we've done is we've done a couple of things. We do have equal men and women at APCO in leadership and throughout the company. Our ownership we're majority employee owned, so being a large shareholder and having other women shareholders, we are a majority women owned, which is a very good feeling for the women in the company. And we have wonderful men too, so working together. We just created a new program that I would love other people to copy called Encore. And what Encore is for women who have left the workforce, but who have a lot of skills and they don't know how to get back in. And so what we've done is, rather than make people start all over again, we have a kind of a bit of a mentoring program, and then we employ them. And we employ them as much time as they can give to working. And it's a little easier maybe in a consulting environment, but it gives them a choice to come back, and it might not be full-time, but it's substantive, and that's really what they care about. And then we created a cohort of those workers so that they had each other for support systems. And if they have to leave to do elder care or something else, it's part of the way we've structured their job. And I think flexibility is really important. I just want to say one other thing about working from home. It's not necessarily better for a lot of women unless there is childcare, because a lot of the younger women at APCO during the pandemic, they struggled the most because they had, I can't tell you how many Zoom calls we did with children on laps and, just trying to accommodate as best we could the situation people were in.
So I started my career right after college. I started as an events coordinator at the college I graduated from. And at the time, it was a part-time job. So I remember I used to get paid by the hour. So it was about 12 dirhams an hour at that time. But it was a lot of fun. I learned from the students at that time. Then I moved on to join an oil and gas company for about 7 years, very much business to business or kind of company. And then I moved on I got my 2 kids. And then I decided I want to rest at home for about a year before I could go out. But 3 months later, I was actually nominated to work for the new challenger telecom brand, which was Do, and I lasted for about 11 years, and I had 4 kids during this period. In our careers, and I'm sure in your career, and I'd love to hear from you, we always have these anchors that actually help us grow. Mine were my parents, my brothers and sisters, people like Her Excellency Munal Marri, who always are there as mentors, who are always there as supporters, who are always there to listen and guide you. Who were your mentors as you were building and growing your career? And what was the role of your family in actually helping you grow?
So I have 3 grown children and I have 9 grandchildren now, but they were in school, in high school and elementary school when I started my business, and I had worked before that. And I have to say that probably my family was my biggest anchor. I think because I had immigrant parents, they didn't quite understand this. And my mother was from Cuba, raised in Cuba. It was very traditional society, so she didn't quite understand what I was doing either. But my family was my support system. And one of the things that we actually talked about this ahead of time, this one part, was I learned after feeling guilty all those years, my kids all had a role at home. And when they went away to college, they were quite independent. And I realized while I was feeling guilty, I was actually giving them a benefit. And I think women really need to think about that a little bit because, having kids who know how to cook and know how to care in the house or know how to do things for themselves, think for themselves, you're actually giving them a gift. And so the independence that they get from, being an anchor at home, while you're kind of feeling guilty about it, you're actually giving them a gift. And they realized it. I wish that they were sitting here because when they went away to college, they came back and they would say, like, you wouldn't believe these other kids. They don't even know how to turn on a washing machine or something like that. So, I realized afterward. And one of the other things I did was, and I wrote a book about this, and I'm happy if anybody wants it, I'll take your card, I'll send you a copy, or I can give you a PDF. But it's called Roots and Wings, and the title came from the fact that on my wall, when I was raising my kids, it said there are only 2 lasting things of value you give your children: roots and wings. And I realized I built my business that way too. Values and then freedom to operate within that value system. But in any event, I think that was my husband. I mean, I'm married now 56 years. And, he had to accommodate. He was not planning on marrying a working woman, but we're partners. And I have to say he's been incredibly helpful. He's a lawyer, and he had his career, but he was not somebody who traveled a lot, so it gave me the freedom of movement, which I'm very grateful for. But other than that what I learned was bits and pieces from just watching other people. I didn't have anybody supporting me, but I would watch somebody's management style and say, I never want to be like that person, or I really want to be like that person. And I guess I'm a conglomerate or an amalgamation of those observations over life.
Thank you, Margery. So like Margery, I've been married for 24 years now. I've got 4 children. My eldest just went to London to study at the University of the Arts, and it was the most difficult decision in my life to let her go and study abroad. But honestly, like Margery, we all feel guilty going to work and leaving our kids behind at home. And we always feel that if we're not around, we will not be able to raise them the way we want them. But honestly, like Margery, I think what has happened is that if you even spend an hour or 2 with them a day and you give them the right values, but you also, the roots, as Margery calls them, and then you give them the wings. I think we call them frameworks and freedom.
Freedom and a framework.
Freedom and frameworks, and you give them the frameworks that they actually can move around them, but you also give them the freedom to choose, the freedom to decide. My daughter was accepted in many universities in the UAE, but she decided to travel to London because she had this ambition of studying industrial design, which was only available as a course abroad. And that was a difficult decision, but like you, she came back and she's on holidays now, and she was like, you know, a lot of the girls, they don't know how to cook, they don't know how to do their laundry, they don't know how to make their beds. And I noticed that she has become very independent for two reasons. I was very busy in my career, and she had to become independent. She had to find solutions for herself. So the other thing that a lot of us feel guilty. We have not been to our kids' school events or the play, or we missed it because work requested us to be somewhere else. Honestly, I have friends whose mothers have been working for a long time, and they say, we have a very good relationship with our mothers. We don't remember if they picked us up or didn't pick us up, or attended the play or did not attend the play, because what is more important is the values and the relationship that you build with your kids. It's not just attending events for them or being there, absolutely there for 24 hours. And also building family, I think, anchors that allows them to also sometimes fill in for you. And I think you've done that beautifully. You go on trips, on an annual trip with your grandchildren. Margery, you have 9 grandchildren, if I understood correct. If you tell us a little bit about that and the importance of family, having them as that anchor to also progress your career.
So for me, when I was working, I started something called the 10-year-old trip. And when each child turned 10, I took them on a business trip so they would see what I did. And it turned out to transfer generations, because when my youngest granddaughter was 9, she called me to say she was going to be turning 10. And I'd never discussed this with her, so evidently it's legacy in the family. So she started a tradition that now 8 of the 9 grandchildren have been on. And it's been more meaningful, I think, even to me. But they research it. It's given them insight in the world. I take them wherever they can justify they want to go. They come back and they actually do PowerPoints for their cousins, and it's really become a very important anchor in the family. And it's free. You can all adopt it and take it with you. I've had a lot of people say they've copied that, and it's been a wonderful thing. And so what we've done is every once in a while we've been able to also translate a major life event into a total family trip. And I was telling this nice gentleman from Emirates, the last one was, Emirates was, the airline was an important part of the experience they had. So, but it creates bonds. These things create bonds that last a lifetime. And my grandchildren, from 3 families, are actually very, very close, even though they don't live near each other. Because of these trips, because my oldest granddaughter is a data scientist now, and she created an algorithm so on the last trip everybody slept with they all had turns sharing rooms and experiences. And of course with 9 people you don't need an algorithm to figure it out, but we let her do her thing.
Thank you, Margery. On women and leadership, again, in the UAE, there was a cabinet resolution that stipulated that there should be women on publicly listed companies' boards. And that's a huge support from our government, and also encouraging a lot of these publicly listed companies to put women on board, to ensure there's diversification and to ensure there's the right progress to gender balance and inequality is put in place. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed thoughts, I think, because I think sometimes it's just necessary to create the influence. And over my career, I went from a situation where there were very few women on boards and all the same women were on boards, to a place where it's a lot more diverse now. I think in the places where they've had quotas, they seem to have worked well. They have changed the dynamic. It's been hard in the transition because it's always been said there aren't enough qualified women, but somehow they find the qualified women. The only hesitation I have is I never want people to think you're on a board because you're a woman. So we have to make sure we all keep up a standard I've been on several boards. I think in the United States, there'll never be a quota, so we have to keep pushing. And there's a lot of movement on something called He for She. I don't know if you've heard of it. But, and to have men be sponsors of women. And I'm so glad to see men in this room because it's the only way things change. And the only way we're going to really have equality. And the World Economic Forum said it's going to take another 123 years to have equality. We can't, none of us will be here. And that is a ridiculous thing. So we really need to work together on this. I think that quotas work in certain places, and it's probably a good idea. But I live in a place where there'll never be a quota because it's freedom or whatever. But so we have to keep pushing.
Great. Just 3 more questions, and I make them brief. A lot of the girls here, and you see a lot of young faces here, and a lot of them, when I ask them, especially the younger generation, when I ask them, what do you aspire to do in your career? And a lot of them say, I aspire to be a minister. And I sometimes think, is it the title that they're after, or is it actually the challenge and the responsibility they're after? What would your advice be to young girls who always aspire to reach the top ladder very quickly?
Be patient. But I do think, look, aspiration is really good and ambition is very good. And we've been taught over the years that women shouldn't express their ambition because it somehow doesn't seem right. But I would tell you that inside of you, you have to have ambition if you want to succeed. How you display it and what you do with it. I've never taken a job because it's going to get me another job. I've taken a job and done the best job I could at that job and learned as much from it so I could take it to the next job. So I would say for everybody, it's great to have ambition to be at the top. And it isn't about the title because when you get there, you'll realize the responsibilities are also maybe outweigh the title from time to time. And but I do think you can't plan that far ahead. You have to. I believe that good things never happen at convenient times. It's actually why I got married when I was 20 because I shouldn't have, but it worked out. But I think with work, you can't be afraid to take a risk. And if you're planning so much, step by step, you'll miss the opportunities that are right in front of you. And so I would say be patient and be ambitious, but be willing to take risks. Men and women, when you offer a woman a job, often she'll say, I've never done that before. If you offer the man the same job, he'll say, great, I'm ready to start. So we have to be ready to start. We can't be questioning ourselves, and we have to educate ourselves as we go.
Margery, you've been to Dubai for about as many times as you can recall over the past 20 years.
My husband insists I live here.
We wish. We all insist. And you told me in a conversation that your perception has completely changed, and you've met a lot of smart women here in the Middle East. And as a strategic communications global company, how would you advise the young girls that are here to change that perception? What do they have to do to be out there? Is it more networking that they need to do? Is it more attending global conferences? What do they have to do to change that perception?
So I think seeing is believing, and what you're referring to is we had a conversation yesterday where I was saying that I have become a real advocate for the women in the Middle East because there's so much misperception, and people don't realize that if you wear something different or if you look different, that you're not even twice as smart as the person next to you. And so I think part of it is just, familiarity and realizing that these things shouldn't be barriers. But I think it's also up to the women, like if you're at a conference or if you're going to something, take the initiative to talk to other people too, because there may be just an unforeseen barrier there that comes from the fact that we might dress differently or look differently, and it might make somebody else uncomfortable. So ease them into it, because once they get to know you, it's incredible. I mean, it's an incredible experience, and some of my best friends in the world are now, here, and I would have missed out if I hadn't done that. So I get very angry at home when there are comments made about, oh, you're going to the middle, you're going to Dubai of all places, right? Aren't you afraid to go? Or how did they treat you there? And I'm laughing because it's so silly. But it is a perception in certain parts of the world, and I think we just have to keep at it.
Just one last question. And somewhere in the world, someone decided that the retirement age should be at 60 or 65. But we all know in today's world, 60 is like the new 40, and people can still give. We see you as an icon. We see you as a global icon.
I'm long past that.
But
60.
But you're still giving. And my final question is how much longer would you be willing to give?
So, for full disclosure, I'm 76, and I always thought that was really old. Until you get there. And I always feel for myself, I have a lot of energy, and I think my team would back that up, that people don't like to travel with me that much. But I think as long as I feel I'm adding value, I would keep at it. If I feel like I'm a drag, then I would stop, because I think we all have to realize that we have an expiration date. And I just haven't found mine yet. And I would advise people to live their life, and somehow I think, when the time comes. I hope I hope I'm not a drag, but I'm still enjoying what I do. I find it fascinating, and I feel like I'm contributing something. And as long as I feel that way, I would continue to do it. But before you go, I'm going to ask you a question, because we talked about work-life balance, and I know when we were sitting over here, a lot of people were just talking about that. And I think we can't leave without addressing the elephant in the room, if you will.
Absolutely. So I believe that work-life balance is actually a myth. It is how you actually take your life forward. So if you want to prioritize your family, you can, and if you want to prioritize your work, you can. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody judges a man for doing more for his family than he's doing at work. Sometimes you give work 100% and you give your family 150%, and sometimes you have to give work a little bit less at 90% and then push for your family at 200%. It's just a mental, I think, or a notion that we take. I think it's something that media probably created more than anything. But I've never felt that I had not had that life-work balance. It's just where my priorities lie and where I want to be, when I want to be with my family and when I want to be with my at work. But for you, I think, Margery, you talk about work-life integration, not work-life balance, and that's a very interesting concept.
Right. I think that we can all find things in work that relate to family and things in family. I mean, I built this business on this whole motto of roots and wings. I mean, I think we should celebrate what we learn in motherhood and what we learn from being home and bring our whole selves to work, because I think it's the values that we have and that we create for ourselves that help us be better at work. So I think there's a way to have work-life integration, but I totally agree. Anybody who thinks that there's a scale and somehow that we're not successful if that isn't totally balanced, you'll drive yourself crazy, because there are days when you do have to give your family 1,000%, and there are a lot of days when you have to tell your family you just can't be there because there's something that's so significant that you have to do it. And I think that's where the balance comes. It's that people on both sides, that you're being honest and that you understand, and that sometimes it means you have to work extra hours at night or something like that to make up for the fact that you wanted to go to the school play. You just, I think everybody has to figure it out for themselves. But the one thing you don't want to do is have a scale.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Margery. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.